point, I think it's pretty clear that Wendy is hiding that she knew these, I mean, I think that like ஬🯐 has presented enough evidence. We now have video footage of the people that Wendy is saying she doesn't know on camera, calling them like the mentor she wants her children to be. So
today I've got with us Kiki Monique. You might know her from her podcast, Pop Crime. You might know her as the talk of shame on social media. And she's here with us today on Pop Culture. Thank you much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm super excited to talk all things pop culture with you. But first, I want to find out a little bit more about you, because you are like Wikipedia, better than Wikipedia when it comes to pop culture. And I just want to know, how far back does that go? Have you always been interested in that? Or was there something that really sparked an interest in you?
I think it was always in me. Like, I mean, I had a subscription to like every gossip tabloid magazine. And I got that honestly from my mom. My mom would, be in the grocery store. She had subscriptions to Star, National Enquirer. So like I would be reading these, along with her. So it was always something I was interested in. But I came from such a traditional family that the thought of somehow making a living off of it just didn't even occur to me until the pandemic, when it was like, well, there's nothing else to do.
So the pandemic comes along, you start to build this following, and now you're here hosting this podcast, Pop Crime, which is a really interesting kind of combination of pop culture and true crime in a way that still feels like good and uplifting to listen to. Tell me a little bit about forming that and where you are today.
It really started with the Johnny Depp trial. I hadn't planned to really cover it, but then people kept saying like, I love the way you do deep dives and, can you cover it? So literally the day of the trial, I was like, okay, let's just do it. And so I just started recapping, and it was surprisingly like not a lot of people were covering it, especially day to day. I mean, this was a very long trial, so I don't think people had the time commitment. I luckily did. And so that brought a lot of followers, and I realized, okay, I love true crime. I love pop culture. People love true crime in general, but it can be very heavy weighing, like that sort of. But when it comes to celebrities, they have champagne problems. So even though it could be some heavy stuff, we're able to kind of watch it as more entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, throwing yourself in the end with the Depp Heard trial, that was like a big one to cover as your first, like foray into the legal realm. Have there been any big lessons or learning curves that you've had to take on as you've stepped into that realm?
Well, I mean, just from watching trials, like, on, laptops and stuff, I kind of learned a lot about like, well, this will be a great way to recap. So going forward, if I watch trials, I know how to do that. But then it got me into like, okay, I live in LA. There's actually a lot of cool cases just at the courthouse. And a lot of times they aren't, most of the time they aren't televised. So then I just started introducing myself with like, okay, going to the courts and just like, watching from the galley. I got very familiar with Pacer and LA Court Online and all of the different, and learning how to just download the lawsuits. Because I find that that's what people are most interested in. The thing that went most viral recently was Lizzo, her lawsuit. And just getting access to that lawsuit early, reading through it and breaking it down for people so they understood in a TikTok was like I think it had over 10 million hits. And so I realized that, I'm not a lawyer and most people aren't, but they're very interested in the law. And so if I could break it down to them in a very layman way, the way I want it broken down to, it's really interesting.
And how difficult is that for you? I mean, you get these huge legal files and you've got to break it down. Is this something that you can kind of whip up now, or was it something that takes a lot of work?
In the beginning, it was like a lot of reading. And so I luckily have a lot of friends and also followers. I had a lawyer, her name is Kate Moss, ironically, who helped me with the Johnny Depp trial. So if there's something that's over my head or above my, my education, she'll always help me out. And now I've just started to learn as I've gone along. So it's gotten much easier to just sort of parse out like, these are the allegations. This is how I can talk about it.
Next step, law school.
Yeah. Well, in California, I mean, it seems like you don't even, I can take the Kim Kardashian route.
Yeah, you can be on American Horror Story while you do it. Now look at you, though. You are the host of 𝐏𝐻's new podcast, Pop Crime. It launched at the end of October. Tell me a little bit about the response you've gotten since you launched that.
I've gotten really good. A lot of people will like slide into my DMs just to tell me like they really love an episode. Like one of the best DMs I got recently was from a lawyer who was like, I love the way that you are presenting the material, like keep going. Even when I went to the courthouse, one of the lawyers at the courthouse was like, oh my gosh, I follow you. Like you're doing a really good job. So getting the feedback from actual lawyers has been really validating. And people, seem really positive about it because again, they love the true crime aspect and they love that it's not as heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I have been I'm halfway through the Bravo podcast because it was just released today. But I'm really loving this episode. Do you have a favorite episode that you've released so far? One that was particularly interesting to record or to put together?
I actually really like this Bravo one too. I haven't listened to the final, but like just in it and doing it, just because I love like Dylan Hafer is just like someone that I love to banter about Bravo with. So that was like a really fun one. And I love doing, so I did a Kanye episode and then I sort of did a swap episode with Not Another True Crime podcast. And we talked about Kanye in a different sense. And so that was really fun to kind of get their perspective on it and how I was presenting it. So that was a really fun one too.
Yeah, the Kanye one was great. And it felt like very timely in a way that I feel like you couldn't have known was going to come up with all the Taylor Swift stuff. Were you shocked to see that back in the news? Because I know I was like, wow, have we stepped inside a time machine there?
I was very surprised that Taylor brought that up again. And I didn't think it would happen. And yeah, I love that it helps my podcast.
Get that SEO. Yeah. So as you're putting these together, what are you looking for when you're looking for cases that interest you? Do you have suggestions from your followers, or is this just like personal stuff, or are you looking in the headlines?
I'm usually looking in the headlines. It's like anything that grabs my attention. And then from there, it's like I want to do my own research. So it's like I will go straight to if I can download the complaint. Obviously, I've made a lot of friends in the media. So luckily, it's like I can reach out to those people in media. If I can't find it, they usually have giant teams that can do it for me and they'll really help me out, which is really good. But yeah, it usually always starts in the headlines for sure.
Well, the Bravo one is certainly very timely because all of the lawsuits that you're talking about there have been like in my feed nonstop. And it was really interesting to hear you talk about them and talk about them in a way that is sourced really well, as opposed to, like Reddit, that kind of thing. What was the most surprising or interesting part of diving into those cases for you?
I think I hadn't even heard of the Heather Gay copyright infringement lawsuit.
Oh my gosh.
That one was really interesting because that's coming up a lot more. Like there's another case I've been following with Kat Von D, the tattoo artist, where basically a guy who took a picture of Jimi Hendrix, she tattooed it on a body. And now the photographer is like suing her because she posted it. So I'm really into these like copyright IP cases lately. They might not be as interesting for the audience, so I'm trying to find ways to make them interesting, only because what I've learned is like the courts can't keep up with how fast technology is moving. And even listening to it, I don't know how these results will come because they don't understand. Unfortunately, people on the benches are just a little older and they don't understand how this technology works. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one with Heather Gay because I read through it at first and was like, wait, what is going on? How is this Heather's fault? But it really does like all come back to her.
Well, and it sounds like, I don't know for sure, but it sounds like maybe they had an intern that was just sourcing stuff off the internet. And, when you're a corporation, you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that you're a big Bravo fan. You were BravoCon, right?
I was.
Okay, so much fun. Let's talk a little bit of Bravo. What is your favorite Bravo show that's on right now or, in the recent past?
I'm a really big Below Deck fan. They have so many different spinoffs now, though it's been hard to keep up, but I've always been a Below Deck fan. I've always been an original Vanderpump Rules fan from day one. Yeah. But right now, Salt Lake City and Beverly Hills Housewives are probably like really killing it. As well as Potomac. Potomac is like really, really killing it too. And even Miami. I will say that like the Housewives have sort of certain franchises have like come back to life, which has been nice.
They really have. And I haven't really launched myself into the Below Deck world because I know there's so many spinoffs and I'm like, they already got me with Housewives. I'm nervous, but sell me on Below Deck. Why should I be watching it?
You know, I feel like if you start from season one, you can't go wrong. It's like you got Captain Lee, you got, Kate, who is just like the queen bee of all stews. And it's just like, it's just fun to watch. Because to me, it's like Vanderpump Rules, but on a boat, getting to see the service staff, having to deal with these people, but there's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of hookups. It's fun.
Rules on a boat? That's like, I'm roped in. I'm sold. Now, talking about the shows that are on right now, Salt Lake City, getting wild. Are you team let Meredith have her bathtub, or are you team no bathtub for her?
What's so funny about that is, Meredith is a Sagittarius. I'm a Sagittarius too. And even though I was like, Meredith, let the bathtub go, I also so empathize with her because it's exactly how, like, if I don't get my way, sometimes I get very dramatic. And I'm like, when she was like, I'm ill, I need a doctor, like, and then she had to bring it up. I was like, I get it. It's very Sagittarian of us.
I love a Sag, and I loved watching her get her glam done while she was hooked up to an IV. So that makes a lot of sense. Now with Salt Lake City too, we've got some legal stuff that's like on the horizon in the show, but it's happening real time with Beauty Lab and Laser, and with Monica, this newcomer. Can you break that down just a little bit for us? Because I'm reading it, I'm like, there's changed names. What is going on here?
Yeah, like when that whole thing came out, it basically came out because Beauty Lab and Laser sued Monica for these, supposedly she didn't pay for services that she had gotten for them. And then she countersued saying, well, I didn't pay for them because you ruined my face. These injections were terrible. And it was funny because I was having a very hard time locating the case. And again, I went to my sources and I was like, can you find this case? And like these big media organizations were like, I can't find it anywhere. And I literally had to go down the Reddit rabbit hole, which I tried, I use Reddit very, like, I never search myself. I use it for very specific reasons. But like with that stuff, they're really good. And finally, I found this one Reddit chain that led me to all of Monica's aliases or other names she used. Yeah. And I put that into like the Utah, and finally it popped up. And so, there was a lot of cases kind of dating back with her like legal name, which is Fowler. But I was like, we all have a past. I'm not going to dig into like, if it's like, she had issues in the past, that's whatever. I want to look at what's now. Mm-hmm. It will be interesting to see how this plays out because obviously the Beauty Laser Lab is like a small claims. They just want like $2,000. Yeah. She's now suing for like other damages. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I know. I hear Bermuda is going to be crazy, but there's been no leaks. So I'm like, I wonder if it has something to do with this lawsuit or something else.
Well, I saw Heather did an interview with, I think, Bryce Sander for ET, mm-hmm. and he brought up that phone call, and she said it's related to Monica in that, but like it's not fully. So she said it's almost like it's the beginning. So she learned something in relation. So whether it's like the Monica that's on this trip is not the Monica she thought she was suing, I guess we'll find out soon.
Oh my gosh. What a great show. What a wild turn of events. Potomac is killing it too. And in a different way. What do you think of the whole like Nneka v. Wendy? They know each other, they don't know each other. Because I'm kind of like puzzled what we're even fighting for at this point.
At this point, I think it's pretty clear that Wendy is hiding that she knew these, I mean, yes. I think that like Nneka has presented enough evidence. We now have video footage of the people that Wendy is saying she doesn't know on camera, calling them like the mentor she wants her children to be. So
yeah, it's not pillars of the community, and yet doesn't know them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's wild. It's fun to watch, but I'm also like, where are we going from here? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's like very clear. I think that when people join Potomac, you want to like, I think Giselle is still Queen Bee. And so they want to join that team. And if the way you can join that team is by throwing Wendy under the bus, well, then we'll throw Wendy under the bus.
Poor Wendy, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know whose side I'm on anymore.
I know.
So we've got Potomac, we've got Salt Lake City. Vanderpump is coming up very soon. What are you looking for in the new season post Sandoval?
I mean, I'm really interested to see how Sandoval is going to be integrated back in the group. I mean, we've seen obviously pictures online, paparazzi of like him being at group events. I'm also interested to see, I want to see the dynamic between the women. You know, Ariana is thriving. We just saw she's going to be on Broadway, you know, like,
Yes.
and I want to see, you know, how the women sort of react to her. Cause like, you know, I sort of talked to them on the red carpet about like, you know, what is the dynamic? And I think there could be some shifting dynamics and some friendships. So that'll be interesting.
That's going to be really interesting to see. Do you think that Ariana is going to still be, you know, held up as this as pillar, or do you think Bravo fans are going to kind of turn, because they do like to turn?
Exactly. Like nobody likes to see people at top too long. And I think she even commented on a post somewhere where like where she was like, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm the villain. And I wouldn't be surprised, you know?
Me neither. Hopefully she'll be off on Broadway. It won't bother her.
Exactly.
All right, I've got one more Bravo question for you before we start to wrap things up. This is the most important Bravo question of all. As in the tried and true tradition of Real Housewives, if you had to get into a crazy drag out fight wearing a silly costume, what costume would you pick?
Oh my gosh. I mean, of ones that are just existing already that I've seen.
Yeah, whatever you envision for yourself.
Gosh. I love the costume fights the most.
I
I mean, I would say that the Amish one was pretty iconic only because people were still churning their butter the entire time, which I couldn't stop to take my eyes off. Because I also have never seen butter churn that way. I've always seen it like with like the sticks. And so I was like, how long is this going to take to churn?
I was like, I don't think I'd eat that once it's done. I'm not sure. Well, I love that. You know, I was like this close to purchasing a bonnet myself. So I'm right there with you. Now, as we start to wrap up, I'm just curious if you have anything else that's in the works, anything else that people should be looking out for, or any kind of episodes that you have coming up that you're really excited for people to see.
Well, you know, it's end of the year, so we're going to do wrap up of just sort of the craziest legal scandals for 2023, which is always, you know, fun to like back to all of those crazy things. Obviously, I want people to subscribe to Pop Crime, and we have, and I also host on SiriusXM. I've been hosting Reality Check. So it's different than Pop Crime, but I get really into all of the reality shows, obviously Bravo, but we do some 90 Day Fiance. And so to do more of the fun side on Radio Andy.
Oh my gosh, so much fun. Just throwing this out there for 90 Day Fiance, opinion on Jasmine and Gino, because I need them to have a spinoff. I need to watch 7 hours of them a week.
You know, Gino, when he wouldn't take off his hat, he drove me crazy at first, but now I realize he's actually the one in the abused relationship, and I need him. If he needs help, I need him to signal, because Jasmine is definitely taking advantage of that man.
Absolutely. I could talk for 90,000 years about 90 Day Fiance, but I will let you go. Thank you so much, Kiki. You've been a delight to have here today.
Thank you so much for having me.